Adam, on the Secondhand Success Show podcast that I host on my own, I interviewed our guest, Sean Yesner, and our mutual real estate attorney. So if you're interested in checking him out, go to episode 10, tgwipodcast.com/Sean Yesner. And he was talking about good debt versus bad debt. And in your opinion, where do you stand with, is it possible to have good debt versus having bad debt?
Oh, yeah. I love this topic. I do have that opinion that there is good debt and bad debt. And this is my personal opinion, but I believe consumer debt is bad debt. Anything that anything that you're borrowing using credit to buy that isn't an asset. And my definition of an asset is something that throws off cash flow or money regularly. So anything that you're buying that doesn't do that, I think is bad debt. So cars, toys, anything you would finance, like with a department store credit card, all of that stuff, credit card stuff. If you buy it and pay it off every month, I'm cool with that. But if you buy it and leave a balance and pay on that, I would consider it bad debt. So I personally am against that. Good debt is, I call it leverage. And to me, that is borrowing to be able to get an asset that will pay you more money than the service of the debt costs you. What about you, Kevin?
Yeah, that is a fantastic point, which segues great to this episode. We're talking about leverage today. And from a consumer standpoint, that debt is very bad for you. And I say that because I am personally in debt. And it's not fun to have. It's so easy to accrue the debt. It's ridiculously easy. And then that's what's the craziest part of it. And I notice a snowball effect. You almost blink like, okay, I can pay it off. I'll pay it off next month. I'll just pay the minimum. And you blink and you're like, oh, wow, there's a lot more debt than I realized. And that doesn't make you financially free. I think like banks do, for example, they create a spread when they loan out money and borrow money. And if there's a spread from the interest rate that they're making, that's profitable. And the same applies for good debt. If you're using debt to make money, then why wouldn't you, right? A lot of people do that with rental properties, where you are leveraging the bank, and after it's all said and done, you're paying the debt service, you're paying property manager, taxes, and all that stuff. You're making money. That is an example of leverage, because you are applying a lever to achieve something and amplify your efforts.
What do you think it would take to not be in debt, especially when you're younger in your career and just kind of getting started with a lot of things? What do you think it would take to not be in debt?
So I would think that it would take self-control as the first thing. But then part of that self-control is understanding what it is that really matters to you and then budgeting accordingly. I'm not here to tell you that going to grab a cup of coffee, you shouldn't do that ever. Will it add up? Yeah, absolutely. If that coffee really means a lot to you, helps you get your day going, find somewhere else where you can kind of detract from that. For me, I spend money on the gym. I have a weightlifting coach because all of those things are important to me. Then I need to sacrifice somewhere else. That could be going out to eat or frivolous spending in other ways. So I think understand like a level of self-awareness, what you want, what you really are willing to spend money on, and then self-control, figuring out a way to be disciplined about not spending it on frivolous stuff. So with that, I think that our willpower isn't the greatest thing. It's just not that good. Maybe it's just me personally, but I think in general, most people don't have the strongest of willpowers, strongest of wills, excuse me. So I think building systems in place are huge for that. And
yeah, and it's tough. I mean, like to be honest, it is difficult. And
yeah,
I think especially in our society, it's extremely difficult when you see other people who you feel like are your peers and they're they're driving nice cars, they have nice stuff, and you think to yourself, oh wow, shouldn't I be the same? They feel like a peer to me, but to do that, I need to extend myself. But that's difficult.
Yeah, I think that it's you touched on something, and not comparing yourself to others is a huge thing, because a lot of people will do things for the sake of external judgment, meaning they will do things so that they look better on paper or at a surface level, but at that same time they're also not willing to do things because they fear the external judgment. So I think it's a quite interesting dichotomy of taking action in a good way and in a bad way.
Yeah, a lot of this stuff I cover with my daughters, and I know on episode 9 we had a podcast about that. It is important to learn this when you're young, and I think a lot of people don't. They don't have someone to teach them this when they're younger. How it's okay to not keep up with the Joneses and to sort of have an appearance that is in line with your reality, right? You don't have to
Absolutely.
put on this air of I'm successful because I'm driving the nice car and wearing the nicest, newest clothes and that kind of thing. That doesn't get any easier as you get older, because I work with a lot of people, and I tell you what, the toys just get more expensive. People who are driving some really nice cars, and I just can't help but think to myself, I wonder how other aspects of their financial life are. To be driving a car that nice, I personally would have to have a lot higher net worth to feel comfortable doing that.
Sure, I agree with you. So I think if I can surmise our opinions together, if you can use debt to generate an income, then that would be what we consider more of leverage, and it's quote unquote good debt to have, because you're basically able to achieve more by using the system. That's where applying the lever comes in. Is that a correct summary of where I think we both stand?
Yes, I'm in agreement with that. I fully support using leverage. In fact, it's a critical part of my strategy, and I see it as being able to do more with the money than you otherwise could.
Yeah, so I think to that point is you have to do the math. If you utilize leverage, if you get debt, if you accrue it, excuse me, to purchase an asset, will the debt be paid off given the income that it's generating? If it does, then you totally should do it. If not, then you're not really making an investment, right? You're just losing money. It's you're not getting any cash flow.
And I guess another interesting thing to talk about with regards to leverage is it in terms of it being part of your strategy, it really does depend on where you are in your investor journey. So when you're trying to scale up like you and I both are, it's critical to use it. At some point, though, we won't be as interested in scaling up as we will in rebalancing. Um, and at that point, we'll stop doing that, right? We'll have other tactics we're taking to rebalance. But when you're trying to scale up, if you have $100,000 to invest, you can go pay cash for one rental house, and that's going to be great, and that's super secure and very low risk because it's paid for, and you can tightly manage the maintenance and capex expenses. But if you're trying to scale up and you want to grow your portfolio, you could go buy 5 rental houses by making 5 $20,000 down payments and financing the remainder of the balance on those. And now you've got 5 houses that are working for you. Your cash flow
Absolutely.
won't be as high each month, but you will be, someone else will be paying down the debt, which is another lever in and of itself with real estate investing.
Yep, I agree. Now, before I even started the whole real estate and financial education journey, when I thought of leverage, I thought of debt, and that just made the most sense to me. But as I am in this and I'm networking and we're connecting with people, building relationships, I'm realizing leverage is more than just money. And what I mean by that is leverage of resources, leverage of a network, leverage of time. Um, what lessons have you learned about leverage since you've gone down this path towards financial freedom?
Yeah, that's neat to take the term and break it outside of the financial definition and think of it in terms of how you can uh, how you can do more with what you have, how you can sort of amplify what you have. For me, it's about a team and realizing that I can do more by partnering with others than I could possibly do by myself. So that'd be the answer to your question is um, teaming up with people, finding ways to put together a team where their strengths play to my weaknesses and vice versa. I can bring something in as well.
Yeah, I am 100% behind that. Another way of thinking about it is I don't know everything there is to know about notes. I don't think I ever will know everything there is to know about notes. I'm going to keep learning, going to keep trying to master the industry. Um, but that's where leverage comes in, asking the right questions to the right people, leveraging a network of individuals like, hey, I'm looking for something to buy, and investors are always willing to arbitrage something at the right price type of thing. Those are all different ways of leverage. Networks and referrals are huge too. And I think that is something that is a good way of utilizing leverage.
Yeah. And with networking, one way to leverage your network is to ask people in your network who else they know who you should be talking to. That's an example of leveraging your network.
Yeah, I think that is actually a very good point. Instead of asking somebody, hey, do you have anything for sale? Hey, I need help on this. You could formulate the question in a way that it makes it seem like they could still help you, but doesn't take up too much of their time or resources. Like, what do you recommend? Who would you recommend I speak to? I think is a good way of utilizing leverage. And maybe this is my own personality, feeling like I don't like to ask people for too much help. But if I word it in a different way, it's still kind of getting me in that right direction, but not necessarily fully leveraging that person.
And then since we're kind of taking the term outside of just the financial definition, one more thing to talk about around this is the greatest tool I believe you have, the greatest lever I believe you have is your mind. I think your mind is a lever. And if you leverage your mind and put it to work for you, the return on that investment will be exponential.
Yeah, absolutely. That is a very good point. To be honest with you, I thought you were going to say time, but I think leveraging your mind is a huge thing as well. Because if you better understand where you want to go, what things you need, what things you don't have, you can figure out the solutions to achieve those.
Yeah, exactly. Educate yourself.
But speaking of time, because it's already on the topic, what I've recognized is the entrepreneurs that I speak to, the investors that I speak to that are successful, they find ways to maximize their time. They have to they have the same 24 hours as you and I do, and as much as our listeners do. But they found ways to get more things done in the same in an hour than I can, and that's where leveraging your time comes in. Leveraging other people's time, building teams, I think is huge, and we're experiencing that using a VA, and that's just an example of how you can leverage other resources to maximize your time.
Yeah, systems are key to that. You have to think about how you can use systems, what type of systems you could put in place to do that. And one that is very, very effective that you mentioned is having a virtual assistant, a VA, to do some of the tasks that require less analysis or critical thinking. That then frees up your time to do those higher level, deeper thinking types of activities.
100%. So the last thing I want to leave our listeners with is what would be the most immediate way they can leverage in their lives today?
That's a good question. What's the most immediate way they could leverage? Listen to Tech Guys Who Invest podcast episode on leverage.
Yeah, I would also say getting educated. I think it's a great one. Um, and talking to people, finding people that effectively are doing what it is that you want to do, and getting on their calendar somehow, or getting into their network, whether it's attending an event, going to one of their seminars, just talking to people to learn more. I think learning is probably, in my opinion, the most immediate way you can use leverage.
And Kevin, one way they can do that is to talk to us. I mean, we would love to talk to our listeners. So why don't you reach out to us? You can get a hold of us by email, through social media. You can find us on our website, tgwipodcast.com. Kevin and I would love to hear from you.
So if you want to reach us out on Instagram, for example, it's at Tech Guys Who Invest. Our email is techguyswhoinvest@gmail.com. If you want to shoot us an email, as Adam mentioned, you can get on our calendars, tgwipodcast.com. Pick /contact. So pick a time that works best with your schedule. We know you're busy, and we're flexible with our time, and we'd love to help you figure out a lever to get the ball moving in your life. Thanks, everybody.